Welcome back to another edition of the Utility Safety Podcast. I am your host, Dick Leonardi. I'm the Creative and Marketing Director for UBM. Today, we're honored to have Zach Spicer, a journeyman lineman and the founder of Line Brothers Keeper, a non-for-profit organization. Zach brings a wealth of experience in the electrical safety and a commendable dedication to helping those in need. He's currently a safety instructor for the state of Tennessee at Job Training and Safety. They provide safety training to electric utilities. Welcome to the podcast, Zach.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Nick, for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you taking time out and reaching out to us to tell your story. You know, how about you kind of let our listeners know, you know, how you got started, you know, in the field, some of your work experience, and then obviously let's talk about your story after that.
All right. Sounds good, sir. I'd come out of the Marine Corps back in 2004, and be honest with you, I did not have any kind of idea of what I was going to be doing. Just got really, really fortunate, really lucky to get hired on a local utility down here in Tennessee. And I remember walking in the first day, looking around the warehouse, and I said, what exactly do we do here? Like, I'd never even thought about where the power comes from, you know, from the plugs and the sockets and lights and everything. And lo and behold, it was the best. I say it's not a job, it's a career. It's the best thing in the world that I'd, you know, ever done at that point. And ended up doing my apprenticeship, getting it knocked out, getting into line work, working on the line crew for several years. And us being a smaller municipal, they had an opening in the substation department. And I thought, you know, the Marine Corps helped me with my, let's say, attention to detail, right? Maybe a little retentive about things, but ended up going over there into the sub department, doing another little apprenticeship. Ended up being foreman over there, running the sub department. Let's see, April this year will be 20 years in the business. So, wow. I've had a very blessed and fortunate career, and a lot of great people out there, great things seen and done, and that's even counting me, you know, deciding to nearly, you know, melt my arm off and stuff like that. I'll take that for what I take it for. It was I think it could have been prevented, and that's why I talk about it. Most guys don't, you know, linemen, I don't know how many up there in your neck of the woods are just a slight bit prideful. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah. Don't want to admit to any kind of ever doing anything wrong, but we do all the time. Everybody messes up, but, you know, might as well call it like it is. And
it's human nature, you know. Yeah. And first off, I want to say, before we dive too deep into your story, you know, thank you for your service. You know, really appreciate that. You know, B, this whole idea that you kind of touched on it, where, you know, you said you walked in and you really didn't have any understanding where, you know, the power was coming from. It's kind of, the public, I think, just expects or takes it for granted, because it is on the utilities, the workers, you know, the line workers have gotten so good, even with being preventative, you know, like even taking, you know, vegetation management and making sure that when storms roll through, the lights stay on. And if it does go off, they get it on. It's top priority. But we take that for granted. And there's a lot of really good salt of the earth people that work for the utilities, that take this job, like you said, as a career. It is a career, and it's important. So thank you for your service, I guess, in both.
I appreciate that. And I'd be honest to say that, you know, if you're in this career to, you know, embrace it, take it for all it's worth, and get what you can out of it, I think, you know, a lot of linemen shortchange yourself when, you know, like you're saying, it's almost like we're the forgotten first responder kind of thing. It's we're there in the shadows. The lights always come on. You don't ever have to think about it. And the only time we ever get recognized is when something bad happens, and or we get the lights back on quicker than expected. And that's about it, really and honestly. Everyday maintenance and making sure the lights stay on. You know, unless you pass a bucket truck going up down the road, you don't even think about it. So I got to say, for everybody out there, even the reason why I parlayed into this, nonprofit thing to help out folks out there is honestly, we are this gigantic brotherhood. I equate it for um, even like the military. It's like a 1,000,000-man army. There's a lot of folks over there. The Marine Corps is a little bit more smaller, tight knit. Like 150,000 or so in there. That's what I equate to us in the line world. We're spread out. We're spread out everywhere from co-ops and munis and IOUs and transmission, distribution, underground. But we're still a tight knit group. I mean, we pick at each other and make fun of each other all the time. But that's who we are and that's what we do. But I got in. Oh yeah, wholeheartedly, and that's why I got in with the nonprofit for the Line Brothers Keeper thing. Because honest to goodness, from experiencing what I experienced from the hospital side of things to the surgeries and everything else that plays into it, not to mention what my wife and family had to deal with, we want to try to keep that from happening to other folks. And then if it does happen, we want to be that resource to help them navigate that. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot get thrown up on you, and it's one of them things that I gotta, I just see it as us helping folks out.
Yeah, and we're on the early side of that, the preventative side. With information and knowledge through Incident Prevention Magazine and the IP Utility Safety Conference that we do. We're trying to prevent that stuff through folks that have lived it and made the mistakes, and are passing that knowledge down to the younger generation that's coming on. One thing I would add to that is we're talking about this brotherhood and, kind of the close-knit family. Everyone's looking out for each other as they should be. And in another podcast series we do with a gentleman named Bill Martin, who's also a CUSP, he talks about syncing up, as well as I should add Brent Jeffries from Ecos. We had a discussion on this about syncing up as a line crew, almost like a team. You ever look at championship teams like the Chicago Bulls or Chicago Blackhawks are the first two, because I'm from Chicago. They come to my mind.
There you go.
But you look at there's been documentaries on championship teams and how they work together. They look out for each other. They take care of each other like a family, because you're syncing up beyond just a coworker. I think that line crews and linemen, line workers, they're doing that, and we need to do a better job of that, because it's important that everyone gets home safe. And that's what us at IP try to do, on the preventative side of things before people get hurt. You guys are on the preventative side as well, but also as a support system through your non-for-profit organization, if it does happen. So why don't you dive into your story and tell us a little bit about what all took place? 'Cause I don't think a lot of our listeners know.
All right. Well, just, stepping on sort of, or taking off that stepping stone you started with right there with, the family dynamic and stuff. One thing I really do like about it, and I taught for a little while in a school down here, and a lot of the younger guys down there, I said, you ready for a little real world dose of reality here? I said, if you look to the guy to the left and right of you, if you get on, say, a contract crew with them, you are honest to goodness. If you're running storm, hurricane, tornadoes, ice, those fellas to each side of you right there, regardless of your backgrounds, what part of the country you come from, who you are, you're going to be spending 16, 18 hours a day working with them, and then probably going back in the same truck to the same hotel, maybe even the same hotel room, getting up, eating with them the next morning. You're going to be with them 24 hours a day for 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it takes to get storm work done, I said, so honest to goodness, that fosters that mentality of, being a brother's keeper and having that family dynamic. And I think a lot of that's just naturally inbuilt in us, because the danger, but behind what we do, and understanding that, and that parlays into sort of my little incident, right? So As a sub foreman at the time, back in 2017, I was getting set up. We had an old substation. It was decommissioned, right? So had 69 kV coming in from transmission, and we had our feeders going out. We were a 72 phase to ground, 12470 phase to phase. Well, we had decommissioned this station, took out the primary breakers, took out the primary transformers. The only thing we had in the station was two 15 kV low side breakers tied to two feeders. Everything else cut loose. And even those feeders on the outside, 795 have been cut, pinned back. So actually this station was completely de-energized. The only thing we had in there hot was 12240 for plugs and lights, and the 130 volt, battery bank. So we used it like a training ground, right? So we would have different utilities come in. We got in together with JTNS, or Job Training and Safety here in the state. We'd have folks from Kentucky and Alabama all come up, and we do a week-long training program. Well, I was getting ready to get that set up. Went in there. We had a class in 2016. Went off without a hitch. Great feedback on it. 2017 rolled around. Hey, you did such a great job last year. That hard work is always rewarded with more hard work, kind of thing. But
I know that.
yeah. It went from a 2-day class to a 5-day class this time. So I was like, all right, cool beans. Got in there, and I had a couple of linemen come with me from our local utility, and they were going to help me along. They were going to be like, teaching assistants kind of things. Well, we got in there right after lunch. We took the high side panel off the vacuum cabinet on that breaker, because one of the linemen, I asked him, I said, you ever seen the actual vacuum bottles? And I'd be hesitant to say that, most of your listeners out there, if you're on the line side of things, linemen don't get exposed to that, right? That's the sub guys, the sub department. If you have some smaller utilities, they probably do like double duty, but most linemen don't get exposed to that. So I said, hey, you need to know, as much as you can about this. So let's just, dive into it. So we took that high voltage cabinet off, and this fellow walked up and proceeded to look around in there and sort of pointed and asked me, well, what moves, right? He was wondering where the contacts were and the linkage. So me being the overachiever that I am, I decided to walk up. We had two little concrete piers that I put one foot on the left one, the right foot on the right one. And I pulled myself up because it was a little bit taller than just me just standing on the ground. And I hollered at him, and I'll go ahead and use his name, Barry. He's a great guy. Like I said, been in the business 25 years at that point in time. Super great lineman, no lost time accidents, And I said, hey, Barry, right here. And I proceeded to point, and I actually made contact with one of the plungers on that high voltage compartment. Well, the issue with that is when I'd done that, I ended up not knowing it was hot. So it was hot, 7,200, and ended up what happened, of course, split second kind of thing. But it ended up 7,200 going into my right hand. Had the flash, had the arc. I honestly do not remember how bright it was. I don't even remember how loud it was. All I know is my apprentice at the time, Cody, was sitting over in the sub house a good 50, 75 foot away. And he said that arc blast, right, that concussive force, like that sound wave, rattled the windows of that old house, knocked the dust off the windows. He said when he turned, he looked out the door, and it looked like the sun was sitting out the door, right? So he come running up, looked over, saw me first burst of gravel, and he told me later, he said, my first thought was, there's my boss, there's my buddy. We've been working together for a couple of years at this point in time, known each other longer than that, but he said he's dead, in his mind. And this is why training is so important. It's because, honestly, at the end of the day, that training that we have to sit through monthly and quarterly and, biannually and all that good stuff, that kicked in. He got on the horn, 911. And one of the things that I'll tell your listeners that honest to goodness, this is something that y'all need to pay attention to and take to heart. We're mandated. I ain't gonna get on a soapbox too long, but I'll get on a soapbox for a second. We're mandated by OSHA and all that good stuff to do a job brief, right? A tailgate or pre-job or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, take that thing seriously, right? I was one of them guys. I sort of lackadaisical about the whole safety thing. I knew what I was doing. I'd been doing it 13 years this time. I was good at what I was doing. And when the job brief calls for a location, that's why it's so important to have everybody on hand to know that location. Because when Cody called 911, the first question they ask is, what's the address of your accident or your emergency, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guarantee that everybody out there, you being one of them, either if you can think back, maybe when you was running around or something like that, or to a specific location that, off the top of your head, you can say, we used to go sit, we was in high school, we'd go sit or we'd go ride around or do something like that, like, certain plaza, certain anything like that, you knew where it was. And if you called your buddy and said, meet me here, he knew where you talk about, right? Same difference with this substation. Everybody knew to meet me at this, what we call Old White Bluff sub. Well, problem is none of us knew the actual physical address. And that doesn't work for 911. The dispatcher doesn't know that. Everybody in the electric department knows it, but nobody other than y'all know that information. So it's vitally important that when you get on the horn or when you do your job brief and stuff, you make sure everybody's in attendance and know where you're talking about and know where you're at. Because I'm telling you, when things hit the fan, you want to be able to dial these people in and get them there as quick as you can. But anyway, like I said, I'll get off my soapbox on that one.
Well, that's a good point. I think there's a couple things I picked up on that. David McPeak, who is our director of professional development at IPI and education, he talks about lead people, not robots. And a job brief, a lot of, it's the same thing, and a lot of people, it's what you put into it. It may seem like a formality and something just to get done, but I think what you said really makes a lot of sense and rings home. You have to pay attention. You have to put the effort in, do it right, because just because it didn't happen, 100 other times doesn't mean something's not going to happen this time. And you want to have all that information ready. You want to have people informed so that you can respond and act, be on the 8 ball, so to speak. It's important. Danny, who I talk with a lot, he's one, I think I mentioned to you earlier, that is Danny Rains from Georgia Power. I think he spent 41 years of his career there. He talks about, just because you've done something a million times and maybe you were trained improperly or you've just been doing it wrong because you've never been hurt, doesn't mean it's not going to happen at some point. And so it's important to follow kind of the rules and guidelines set forth, because in your case alone, just on the job brief, filling that out properly, you've done it a million times. It's just another day. You've done the work a million times. You're experienced, and without that location, how do you get emergency services there to help quickly?
That's exactly it. Because it's like the same thing having insurance, right? You don't go buy car insurance expecting to have a car wreck. It's you do it for just in case, and that's exactly the way we need to look at this stuff. Is just in case. You better have all your ducks in a row, because when it does hit the fan, you want as much of it to be muscle memory, as much of it to be known, as much of it to be out there as you can. That means a quicker response time, and that might lead to people between losing their life and being able to still be here with us. So it's something that a lot of folks don't appreciate that necessarily, but because like you said, it's have it. We just check the boxes. Yeah, we're here. The big end goes in the ground, little end goes up, wire goes up there, that kind of thing. And you definitely need to give it the weight it deserves. I can promise you. And so when Cody made that 911 call, he had to actually physically run outside the substation, read the placard for the address. Luckily, within, I would say, a block, there was a brand new fire hall. And just so happened that afternoon, there's an ambulance sitting over there. So, I mean, it was like literally 4 or 5 minutes before they got over there. And they, when they done all that, I remember by the time he come running back in, I popped up because I guess it knocked me out, just that concussive wave and everything. And I popped up and I walked to the other side of the sub, looking around, not really knowing what was going on, sort of a little confused, like a haze, like a fog kind of thing. And that's when I turned around, come running back, and I saw another lineman that was with me. He had a first aid kit and an AED, and he was running at me. And I said, that's weird. All right. Well, I turned and saw Barry. Of course, Barry had all his, the appropriate PPE on, hard hat, safety glasses, whole 9 yards, but the skin on his nose and lips were just like flaps hanging off. And I was like, oh, Lord. I said, that looks terrible. And then it finally clicked, right? I looked down, looked at my right arm, and this day being a hot August afternoon down here in Tennessee, it's hot and the humidity's even hotter. And so I had my long sleeve shirt rolled up, and I looked down and all the skin and stuff on my right arm was just like a combination of like melted plastic wax and like a shredded t-shirt just sort of hanging off. And I was like, okay, I know what I've done now. I put 2 and 2 together. I really wasn't feeling pain necessarily. I guess it was just all the adrenaline pumping through me. I really wasn't feeling much. They talked me into sat down, chilling out, and the ambulance pulled up, got over in that, and they called Life Flight. And my first assumption was they called Life Flight because, I got burned so bad. But I come to later understand my lovely wife is now becoming an RN. She'd been in the medical side of things for 20 years, but she got her RN here this last year, and has since even went to the burn center and worked in whole 9 yards. But when they called Life Flight, it was because they were worried that when that arc happened and, at 35,000 degree, blast right there, what it does to the metals and everything else, it just sort of, vaporizes them, right? Just little, like picturing tiny, microscopic droplets of molten copper and brass and bronze and everything. And I inhaled that because one thing I do remember is when I hit it, I remember bowing up real bad, like being really intelligent country boy that we are down here. Somebody ever talk you into grabbing a hot fence, because that's what we do. And just remember getting hit like that. It felt like I was going to bow up to the point my brain was going to be like toothpaste and squish out my ears. And then I screamed, oh God. And that was it. I was out. And so they told me that I had inhaled that stuff, and they were worried that, my lungs were essentially going to solidify. All those little droplets were going to. So at that point, they thought my lungs were going to be solidified, right? So they were going to intubate me, breathe for me, whole 9 yards. And so while all this was going on, Barry, even though he was hurt, got on the Mayday radio, got a Mayday call in, and my boss was notified. And I had an amazing boss, great superintendent, and he was about a block away from where my wife worked. And instead of calling her, he rolled up down there. Like I said, we're a pretty small municipal. Everybody knows everybody. And he rolled in there, found my wife, and said, hey, you need to come with me. Zach's been hurt. And her first thought was, okay, haha, funny. Where's he at? What are y'all doing? You expecting me to jump out behind a door or something. And he goes, no, like, seriously, you need to come on. Zach's been hurt. And she goes, that's not really funny. You don't joke about that. Of all things, not that, right? Well, it took 3 times, but when she finally or when he finally said, "Look, life flight's on the way. You got to come with me." And she said she just went into automatic mode, put her put her stuff down, grabbed her purse, and rolled out. And the layout of our cities and stuff, White Bluff, where I was at, is actually on the way to Vanderbilt Hospital up in Nashville. And so they said maybe we can get there in time to see him before he's carted off in life flight. So they come pulling up. Life flight was circling. Well, she crawled up in the ambulance for just a split second, asked me, "Are you okay?" I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Granted, I really wasn't, but it made her feel better. And it was just one of them things to be, my little smart butt saying to her, because that's what I did. And they put me in life flight, flew me up there. One thing I do remember is maybe some of your listeners can, if they remember MASH, a lot of them probably don't if they're the younger generations, but how the helicopter lands and the doctors and the white coats are blowing and all that. That's what I picture happened. Probably wasn't the case, but in my head, it sounds cool, and this is my story, so I'm rolling with it. But when they got me off life flight, they originally told me I was going to lose my right arm from the elbow down, lose all my fingers on my left hand. And then, honestly, when she had told me that, I was like, okay. Because, like I said, I'd been in the business 13 years this time. Every time I'd heard a story where somebody got hurt, they lost something. And I'm like, hey, I'm alive. Hey, that's the price to pay, right? So I was just chalking it up. It's part of the process. Well, they worked up to my face because it was burnt really bad, and they proceeded to ask me about my eyes. And for some reason that day, I had my hard hat on, FR, all that good stuff, but I left my safety glasses sitting on the desk in the sub house, and I walked outside. I don't know why to this day, but when she asked me about my eyesight, I said, well, I wear prescription glasses, but I got contacts in. And it was like the entire room just got hushed. Just, you could hear a pin drop, because she said, well, Mr. Spicer, prepare to be blind. And I don't know how you prepare yourself for that, really. And honestly, it was something that hit me that I didn't even think about, because they were worried that contacts had melted to my eyes. And that was something that I would say the only time in my life it felt like a movie, to where it's like one of the slow-mo scenes, you know what I mean? Like 10 seconds turns into 10 minutes. Because honestly, when she told me that, a million things rolling through my head, and I'm going, oh crap! My kids are now gonna always be that age, right? Like, I'll never see them grow up. I'll never get to see how beautiful my daughter looks walking down the aisle, doing the dad thing, and then I'll never look at them blue eyes of that grandboy one of these days, right? And then it really hit me, because 26 minutes ago, that life flight ride, when I took off, I talked to my wife, but honestly, I could not remember the color shirt she had on. And I was like, you talking about taking something for granted? That was the last time I'll ever see her. And I didn't even pay enough attention to see what color shirt she had on, right? And so, trust me, when I talk about taking things for granted, making every moment count kind of thing, it's legit. It's legit. You got to pay attention to all life's little details, because you get wrapped up in a lot of stuff and you don't appreciate all the small things. But luckily, at the end of the day, after the burn ward, skin grafts, surgeries, they saved my eyes, pretty much saved everything. When I left the hospital, I still had everything. 5 years later, the hand kept deteriorating, and so they ended up actually going in and taking off my middle finger on my right hand about a year and a half ago. But other than that, I mean, a lot of scars and skin grafts and all that kind of stuff, but that's really it. You know what I'm saying? I got real fortunate, really blessed on that end of it. And knowing what we went through, knowing what we dealt with, it was something that's the whole premise behind the Line Brothers Keeper thing, is so we can hopefully prevent that from happening. Of course, like the whole IP thing, right? The prevention part of it. But if it does occur, know that there's somebody there that's dealt with probably what you're dealing with, going through with it, and knowing how to come out of it in what we call a new normal on the other side of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. The picture you said of seeing your wife for the last time, or not being able to see your kids as they grow, they kind of just stop from a visual standpoint from progressing in your mind, because you can't see them as they grow if that were to continue on after. Thankfully that came back, but wow, that was pretty powerful for me, because I was thinking about that, and I'm like, put myself in those same shoes, and yeah, that's definitely caught my attention. So what, it's a strong and powerful message and story. And, what have you changed? What kind of things have you changed about your life? Obviously you started the foundation, but what things from a work standpoint and things like that from a safety perspective have come out of this experience?
One thing I have learned wholeheartedly is the simple fact of making sure, and one thing about being a safety guy now is, the shoes on the other foot kind of thing. You're now the one that sort of poked at and laughed at all the time. But honesty, when it comes from me talking to any of my utilities I go to, it's 100% heartfelt, truthful on that end of it. When I talk about, taking the time to do the right things, one thing I have saw over and over and over in this industry is fellas need to take the time to just, at the bare minimum, put a set of grounds on it. I know here 2 weeks ago now, that big storm down in Texas, I know they had a fatality. I know they had another contractor lose his arms. And there's even instances of customers rigging up their own extendo sticks and pogo sticks and stuff like that out of PVC and trying to heat lines up and do things like that. So when it comes to us doing our job very well, getting the lights back on, doing the right thing, even if you know it's dead because you took the stinger off or done whatever you did, back feed's always dangerous. But at the end of the day, protect yourself, because you are 100% in charge of your own safety. And if you want to go home every night, you got to take those steps. You got to own it 100%. So at the end of the day, one thing that I make sure of, and that would have prevented my accident wholeheartedly, if, just stuck to the basic rules, right? Every lineman knows the golden rule: if it ain't grounded, it ain't dead situation. So if I'd have just stuck a set of grounds on it, we'd have known real quick it was hot. And I just, those bare minimum basic things that we all know we should do, actually take the time and do them.
Yeah. I mean, shortcuts in life and work, are attractive, right? Because you can save time and you're under deadlines. But when it comes to safety, when it can affect your whole outcome of your life, you have to put you first. No one's going to protect you like you first. And no one's, same goes with kind of your line crew, your team. They're looking out for you like family, but you got to look out for you first, and then you look out for your coworkers, and they look out for you. I mean, you got to protect each other out there as you're doing the work. And the work is important. Don't get me wrong. People having power is important, but your safety is number one. You can't do your mission right without protecting yourself, because if, God forbid, something like this happens because you take a shortcut, or hey, my boss isn't looking, I got to get this done, I'm under deadlines, then you can't do work in the future. And you can't be there for your family and friends. So yeah, that's it's pretty powerful. What I'd say is, I talked to one of the guys I speak with a lot, Bill, and he worked for a utility, and his boss, he was working on a job, and I'm probably going to botch some of this, but he he put on some gloves and PPE, and he was going to do the work, and his boss kind of looked at him and was like, "What are you putting those on for?" And he's like, "Well, he's like, it's grounded." He's like, "Well, it makes me feel safe." And he's like, I know you say it's grounded, but if it makes me feel safe, or more safe, that shouldn't be an issue. You know what I mean? And I remember him saying he knew that it wasn't grounded properly. And he said, what, if you think that it's properly grounded, and he explained to him that it wasn't, but he's like, if you think it is, then why don't you do it? And he did, and he ended up, it was, I don't know what the voltage was, but ended up shocking himself. And, it's just, you have to look out for yourself.
Yeah.
And your team.
I'll be honest with you. One thing I've seen is, like, when it comes to, and I'm not going to jump on millennials or anything like that, or that kind of crowd, but the younger generation tend to ask more questions, tend to, some of the older guys think they buck the system kind of, and honestly, I think us older guys need to change our approach on a lot of things, because if you have a younger guy, same kind of scenario right there, we'll say, hey, I'm putting my gloves on, even though you said it was grounded, I'm going to put my gloves on, it makes me feel safer. Instead of going, well, why are you doing it? Honestly, the older generation needs to look at it and change their perspective, because what that fella is doing now is actually taking care of himself, but he's also, in a roundabout way, taking care of you. Because if you were the foreman, or you're the boss or lead lineman, and somebody gets hurt on your watch, somebody gets hurt while you're there, it's, that snowball's rolling downhill, and it's going to end up catching you. And so I tell folks, embrace it. Don't be hateful about it. Don't look like they're trying to, undermine you or whatever. Embrace that side of it, and say, hey, this guy's thinking, yes, what can we do to either put his mind at ease, and or why is he thinking like that? But he's actually taking care of you and him at the same time. And so you need to embrace it and move forward with it like that, because a lot of times, this is how I'll say it, I love my foreman to death. Thought the world of that man, and back in the day, I'd do whatever in the world he told me to do. After seeing how the world worked and understanding a lot of these safety rules, it ain't got nothing to do with me not respecting that man, me not trusting that man, because at the end of the day, he's exactly like me, you, and everybody else. He's just a fella, and he can make a mistake.
Oh yeah.
And that's all it takes, is him to think he got the right breaker, him to think he got the right line, and he thinks he's 100% right and 100% truthful and all that. But if you're the one putting hands on it, at the end of the day, like you said, you're in charge of your own safety. And I know we look out for one another, but at the end of the day, you're in charge for your own safety. And so, nothing with respect, nothing with trust, but he can make a mistake like anybody else can. So that's why you have to take those steps to ensure your own safety.
Oh yeah, we're all human. We all make mistakes, even if our intentions are pure and 100% good. We all make mistakes. So yeah, that's exactly right. And it's funny that you brought up that younger people, are asking a lot of questions, because Bill says the same thing. He said he's very into, kind of the science behind the why, and he looks into things a little differently, and interesting kind of thought process. And he says that every generation through science is proven to be smarter than the prior generation. And he said the younger generation, kind of reiterated the same point you said, asks questions. Okay, hey, go do that, go ground that. Why? They ask the question why. And yeah, from an older generation, which more was command and control, hey, go do this, and you do it, and they're throwing in that why. That could come off as like you're not respecting your boss or, you know, your higher up. But at the end of the day, I think, yeah, it's good that they're asking why. You got to know the why behind what you're doing, you know, to learn that. Sometimes people learn in all different ways. And so it's just interesting you brought that up too about, you know, the younger generation asking the question why. I find that kind of interesting because I've had that discussion before.
That's exactly the truth.
So so obviously this, you know, incident and the story, which I think is extremely powerful, kind of got you to start the not-for-profit organization. Talk about that a little bit, because clearly you're passionate about it.
Yeah, it's something that you know, dealing with it. Perfect little example right off the bat would be, you know, if something ever does happen, your wife or your better half or your parents get that phone call, or the boss man shows up knocking at the door, guaranteed, regardless if you're at the house, if you're at work, your first thought is, you know, is he alive? Is he going to be okay? All this good stuff. That's where you're going. That's what you're thinking about. You're not thinking about, I'm probably going to be stuck in a hospital waiting room for the next 6 hours, next 10 hours. Do I have a phone charger? Do I have maybe a little toothbrush or toothpaste? You know what I'm saying? If you're taking kids, do you have little toys or little coloring books to keep them occupied and entertained for the next 5 to 10 hours? You know, you don't think about any of that stuff. All you think about is the better half or the other one that's laid in the hospital bed, right? And so we dealt with that, thinking of things that, you know, she said, I wish I had while I was up there. So we make a little care package, and if we're available, one thing being nice is, you know, we're so close to Vanderbilt, to the burn center up there. We go up there and visit several of them up there because it's just right down the road. But if, you know, it's out of town or something, we send them care packages and stuff. And we're not really big as far as a nonprofit. Her and I both have full-time jobs, and we do this, you know, on the side as much as we can, and just to help navigate through all the ins and outs. Not to mention, honestly, sort of, you know, bouncing off of my accident thing. One thing I'll tell folks too is the simple fact of all these safety rules, all that stuff's in play for a reason, right? Like, it's state of Tennessee, I believe it's been documented. There's been an instance where if you get hurt, knowingly breaking the rules, right? Like what OSHA calls a willful violation. You get caught doing something like that, you get hurt. The workers' comp, that's just an insurance company. They can essentially say it's like you driving your vehicle and you get in a wreck, but you're drunk, right? And they're like, we're not paying for that because you knew better. You shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Same thing on the workers' comp side. If they catch you doing something and you got hurt, and they know you broke the rules by an investigation. I mean, I think by the time I walked out of the hospital back in 2017, I done racked up probably $800,000 in hospital bills. Wow. And so when they look at you and tell you you broke the rules, this is on you. So when these fellas signing the job briefs, being there, going through this, wearing your PPE, covering up, all them things play a big part in it, because trust me, you don't want to walk out of there. You might not walk out of there. You might, you know, be missing arms and legs and everything else. I don't know any other career that with the amount of education that we have, that we can make the money we make. And when that goes away, trust me, all the toys from the side-by-sides to the boats and the RVs and all that money's not easily made. You know, that on-call money's not there. That overtime money, that storm money ain't there. Trust me, it's even hard to get a job after that. So make sure you do the right thing for the right reasons, you know, safety and take care of yourself. But honestly, the almighty dollar at the end of the day, if you don't do the right thing for the right reason, they can buck you and say, hey, guess what, boo-boo? You're now stuck with this debt. and hopefully you're going to be okay, and hopefully you can find another job, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that was one thing. The financial aspect of it, we help out as much as we can. Most utilities that we deal with, they're great. They're super awesome when it comes to stuff. People, they make sure the family and stuff, have a hotel room close and have gas money to get back and forth, or plane tickets.
Yeah.
Some of them don't have that, so we try to provide that if we can. And then one thing also that we do is make sure that know that somebody has been where you're at. We're more of a personal kind of thing, to where if you want to call and talk, I'll listen. My wife will listen, and just have somebody that can relate to where you're at, because that fear of the unknown, that fear of not knowing what's coming next, and how are we going to deal with this, or what are we going to do here, that right there is so overwhelming that it just collapses people. So we holler at them, hey, don't hesitate. I've spent 2, 3, 4 hours on the phone at points in time, just listening to people vent about things, about what happened and why it shouldn't happen, and what do we do now. Like, one of the best ones I had was a fella, South Carolina, I believe, and he called me up and said, I didn't know who to reach out to ask a question to, because this is such a weird question. He said, but I think you might be the guy. I was like, all right. He goes, I got to go in for skin graft surgery, and they were asking where I prefer to get the donor skin from. Is it my thigh or my butt cheek or something like that? And he goes, I don't know who else to ask that question to. And I was like, well, you just so happened you called the right fellow, boo-boo. So it was just, that kind of stuff. We're there to help how we can. Like I said, financial wise, little things, are just listening, being a shoulder to cry on, or an ear to listen to. And that's why we picked up the nonprofit thing and trying to help folks out. And we've sent stuff to guys in, California, Texas, Indiana. There's a great guy in Indiana right now doing like a fundraiser kind of thing, trying to help us out. And a lot of different, associations from Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Arkansas. It's definitely picking up and getting bigger. We're getting out there a little bit more, but we can't do it without folks' help. So people supporting us, people helping us out, just getting our name out there helps out tremendously. And so that's why, I said at the beginning, heartfelt meant it. Mr. Nick, you allowing us to do this, and giving us this platform, we greatly appreciate it. Giving us a chance to get out there, and just at the end of the day, honestly, I'm more concerned with preventing this kind of stuff from happening. But if it ever does happen, don't hesitate to call, reach out, website, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, get a hold of us, and we'll do whatever we can to help out in that situation.
Yeah. What, so if folks want to reach out, they want to help to donate to the cause, which is obviously a great cause. How would they do that? What's your website?
Website would be linebrotherskeeper.org. And we do donations and all that, but I was never really comfortable asking for donations. So I started doing some woodworking stuff, building, climbing belts and hooks and different things like that out of wood. Like the climbing belt's got the screwdriver and the wrench and the hammer and everything. Everything's made out of wood as best I can make it. And,
Cool.
And so I sell that stuff, and typically we go to conferences and rodeos. We try to raffle those things off to raise money, but they can donate. We got Facebook, Line Brothers Keeper on Facebook, same thing on Instagram, and that all leads back to the website. And we, if you get a conference, something like that, willing to have us out, we're always willing to take a chance and head out wherever, whatever part of the country we can. And we also do some safety speaking as well. I have a whole PowerPoint thing and all the gruesome pictures of the hospital stay on my accident, for safety conferences or safety stand downs and all that. And in most of the time, that fella I was telling you about up in Illinois, the double amputee fella up there, he's got in cahoots with us. And now when he goes out and does speaking engagements, he pretty much tells them, hey, just whatever you're going to pay me, just donate it to them. And so, people like that, outstanding, super great people, and they help us out tremendously. So I want to give a shout out to Jerry Kinney if I can, because if you know him, you're lucky enough to know him. Trust me, he's a great guy, a good friend of mine, and one of the better fellows out there in this world. I can promise you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So that's linebrotherskeeper.org. I'm on your site now, looking at some of your woodworking, and it's pretty cool. That belt. Climbing belt with hooks is pretty impressive, and that's all wood.
Yes, sir.
Wow, that's beautiful. So we'll make sure to link the website in the description. And we really appreciate you coming and sharing your story. I know sometimes people are private; it's hard to share, but we appreciate you doing that. We appreciate you offering a resource for line workers that get injured, and also, on the preventative side, trying to help. And, just really, really appreciate the time speaking about this with us today.
Well, I appreciate y'all and appreciate IP and stuff. And I'm a CUSP as well. I've taken advantage of that, and I'm a part of that world, and trying to get trained up on the safety aspect as best I can. Great organization. Great thing to have, especially if you're getting into the safety side of things. It's helped me out tremendously as far as getting my feet under me, and I'm hoping to attend an IP conference coming up here sooner than later. So getting into that, and I can tell you it's definitely well worth it on the CUSP side of things for the credentialing and the knowledge that comes along with it. It's not one of those rubber stamp deals. You definitely earn it when you get it. I can promise you that. So it's a great organization, great thing that they do, and I'm fortunate to be a part of it.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we so our founder, we're a women-owned business. Utility Business Media is our main company, and IP is off of that. And Carla Hausch, who is our CEO, as well as Danny Rains and Jim Vaughn and Pam Tompkins and all these folks, Mac Turner, I know I'm missing some folks in there, but they started this, basically at Carla's kitchen table, the CUSP program, because there was a need in the industry. And, as it grew, we don't own it. We actually manage the association. They have their own independent board. They make their own decisions. We have a great program director, Sean Talbot, who heads that up, and but it's a great program, and I appreciate you saying that. That's the type of feedback we've been getting about the credential. Is it's really, really good credential. It's respected in the industry. So how one other thing I didn't ask you, if folks want to reach out to you, maybe they want to talk to you or ask you about some events, what's your email? How can they get a hold of you?
It'll be ZM Spicer at linebrotherskeeper.com. And if anybody hears of anyone getting injured or needing help, on the website we have a form on there you can go to, click on it, fill out the information as best you can, to either for us to holler at you or holler at them, something like that, and for us to start sending assistance or whatever. You can contact us that way. A lot of times if I hear about it through the Good Old Boy Network, what we do is, either go to a GoFundMe and whoever organized it, we reached out to them, and or a lot of utilities are real awesome about, I'll call them up and talk to them on a personal basis, and just, unless folks are cool with us sharing what's going on, we all keep it confidential and stuff like that. But I'll be honest with you, the more folks I talk to, I think they understand that. I don't know. This is one of my goals now in life, now that I'm a safety guy, because I think the safety aspect of it, you get that rap of, the safety cop and all that kind of stuff. And that's not what a safety guy is supposed to be. But I want to change something. I want to take that near miss, right? This is one of my goals. I want to take that near miss and I want to pitch that out the window, because I feel like near miss has a negative connotation to it, and I want to change it to a good catch, right? So I want to put a positive spin on it. And a lot of places, a lot of utilities, a lot of companies are saying, hey, yeah, of course, don't share, personal information or nothing like that, but share what happened, talk about it, because honestly, at the end of the day, if something does occur, the best thing you can do is talk about it, because it's not like you can go back and undo it. All you can do is move forward and share that information. That helps get it out there, why it happened, what can we do to prevent it happening again, what steps we can take, and how can we get better as an industry, as a line crew, or as a company. That's what is awesome about this, is a lot of folks are picking that up and running with that. And I think that's going to help us out tremendously as a utility, or as a workforce, across the nation there, if not, further than that. But I think that's one of the cool things about it. But we keep everything confidential unless you ask us, or unless you allow us to talk about anything. But email, I think the website's even got phone numbers for us, the whole 9 yards. Don't hesitate to email, call, put that form in, whatever we can do to help out, we'd be glad to. And if anybody's got questions or thoughts or concerns or anything, don't hesitate to holler at us. Like I said, we're pretty small, just me and the wife pretty much, but got a couple of great board members. But we, being a nonprofit, it's a lot to do. But hey, it's one of those passions of the heart. So that's what you do with it, right?
Yeah, and I can tell you're passionate. It's a good thing to be passionate about. It's our passion at IP, as well as protecting people, making sure people get home safe to their families. So I really thanks again for the time. Make sure to look in the podcast description for the contact info if you need it. And thanks for spending time with us, Zach.
Well, I greatly appreciate you having me on there, Mr. Nick, and look forward to hearing it. And definitely gonna check out the forum thing you give me a heads up on.
Oh yeah. For folks that don't know, the IPI forum is held usually on the second week of the month at no cost, as long as people show up. David McPeak and the resident experts do it, and it doesn't cost you anything, and you can ask them anything you want. And there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of years of experience there, from OSHA litigation to utility security to safety, to leadership. So check it out, and it's always a great resource. And you guys over at Line Brothers Keeper have given people a really good resource too, so we appreciate that.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your time today.
All right, thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too, sir.
Howdy, partners. The IP Utility Safety Conference is hightailing into Dallas, Texas this October 22nd through the 24th. Register today at utilitysafetyconference.com.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policy changes with your company management prior to implementation.